Well, hello, all of you residents of Gauteng, and welcome to another connectivity session with the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. We have a steamer of a conversation for you today, which is good. The conversation will be warm because the weather in Gauteng is not. Joining us in our conversation today, we're going to be talking about strengthening governance for the effective allocation and utilization of budgets. And this couldn't have come at a better time, not with our Minister of Finance having delivered just today what has been called a holdover budget. Of course, the question today is around, should the provincial legislature be given powers to amend budgets of government departments? And that's something we're going to be speaking about here today. Joining me in this conversation is Honorable Mbisi, who is with e-Government and Treasury, as well as Honorable Hassan, who is the member of the provincial legislature. We've got Honorable Modise, who is with Infrastructure Development, as well as Honorable Dakile, who's with Roads and Transport. Gentlemen and lady, welcome to all of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Busi.
Thank you.
Excellent. The way we like to do these sessions is frank, it's light, but informative. We like to treat these sessions as an information session, sharing, as well as a collaboration with the citizens of the province. We're now at a tad over 60 people. That's 63 people who joined in. We're expecting well over 100. So as we continue in our conversation today, we look forward to more and more citizens of the province joining us. Honorable Dakile, we know that you are sitting in a petrol station, which I suppose is the nature of being a member of the province, because we're constantly on the mobile. Now, Honorable Dakile, I thought you were sitting on at a petrol station because you are with Roads and Transport in terms of a portfolio. Are those two things not related?
Well, yeah, in a way, I'm also observing here the public transport.
Oversight roles.
Yeah.
As you should be. So let's get going with it. I think maybe just as a premise to the conversation, to touch on what are probably the macro issues that South Africa is faced with. And then what I will do is I come to the more mechanistic issues around the provincial legislature and this current round of votes that we're going through. But as we all know, the Gauteng province is the economic hub. The truth is, it's the economic hub not only of South Africa, but it's actually the economic hub of the continent, if we're completely honest.
Yep.
Much of the innovation, business development that happens in the Gauteng province becomes activity, innovation, business development that the rest of the country and continent benefits from. And that goes without saying. That notwithstanding, we're expecting, as at the minister's budget speech just today, a decline in 7.2% in GDP for the country. That will have a knock-on effect, which will probably be most felt in Gauteng province, which is the economic hub. It's true too, in terms of if you look at our business sector, we're expecting a shortfall of just over 300 billion in terms of collection from the revenue services. So before we get started in terms of the conversation we're having today, and our conversation again is around strengthening governance for the effective allocation of utilization of budgets, what I'd love to do is to go around the virtual table and to get each of your thoughts around where South Africa finds itself and what it is that you think South Africa needs to do. And I'm going to pick as my first victim here, only because she is the rose amongst us thorns, Fasiha. Fasiha, you first.
Thanks, Busi. Yeah, today the Minister of Finance, we know, tabled the budget, and it's quite a gloomy situation. So I think we're all feeling a bit extra negative, given everything that's going on. But I also think, and I've said this before, that this is really, or COVID has really provided us with an opportunity to kind of do a factory reset in some ways, in which the economy that we create after this is one in which we can try and ensure more equitability, more fairness, one in which there's more opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to be an optimist at the moment amongst a very difficult situation. But I think that's really because we don't have any other choice, right? we're in a very difficult situation, and the only way we're going to pull ourselves out of it is a very difficult uphill climb.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Shall we come to you, Honorable Modise? What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Ms. Bravosi, for the opportunity to and a chance that you've given us and my colleagues to interact with the people of Gauteng on a very different platform. Very, very different. I'm getting used to it. I was now getting used to Microsoft and Zoom. Now I'm introduced to webinar. It was very difficult to log in the first place, but well, when we're here now. And let me just say that my apologies if the lighting is not in order. I'm also parked on the side of the road. I was coming from another meeting and I got caught before I could get home. So there was nothing I could do. I wanted to respect the time of the meeting and respect everyone that have sacrificed their time to be here.
Good
and
man.
to respond to your question, well, this is something that is not out of our own doing. It's not something that we had anticipated where we find ourselves today, because we're struggling with it as we go on, because it's a situation that just happened. Like, you wake up and the next thing there's corona. Businesses are collapsing, SMMEs are unable to provide anymore, people are losing their jobs day in and day out, and unfortunately the young people are feeling the brunt of what is happening currently, and it's tough for everyone. I can only imagine those who need to log into meetings, the data that they get to lose, and they still have to recharge or refill. I don't know what is it that you do to have more data. And my heart goes to those who are into informal business, who are unfortunately unable to go to work because of the regulation that are beyond their control and beyond anyone else's control. You can think of those guys who cut your hair informally in town. You can think of those who stay in corners selling a keep and all of that, who are unable to do so, and the difficulty that they're subjected to in providing for their families. So it's a very, very tough situation. And like Fasia has said, the uphill is going to be a very difficult one. I'm sure those who run Comrades Marathon will tell you that this uphill is nothing compared to what they are subjected to for them to win the Comrades Marathon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you're on the money as you reference something like a Comrades Marathon, because it's pretty clear that that's where we are right now, isn't it? We are in heat of a marathon. And Dade Modise, let me come to you. What are your thoughts in particular about where South Africa, sorry, not Dade Modise, Dade Mpisi, what are your thoughts in particular as it pertains to where South Africa finds itself right now, in this moment that we are in?
Thanks, Vusi, and greetings to all the Gautengers, and I hope my colleague is safe on the side of the road there. So I'm worried about them being in the garage and on the road. However, I must say that South Africa is facing a very serious economic challenges today, and as a result of the pandemic, which is COVID-19, our economy is going to be stretched. It's going to we know that we're going to have a lot of shortfall, 300 billion to 350 billion. We have lost so many jobs in the economy, and then that is something that we should be worried about. Myself, as the chairperson of this portfolio committee of finance, we look at many areas which we think that our people should look at going forward. I know now we have to actually tighten our belt. We have to assist one another. We have to also request those who are in business that they must not retrench people for the sake of retrenching them because of COVID. And I can tell you, Vusi and my colleagues, that as we speak today, there are a number of companies that are retrenching people, not because of COVID, but they are now taking that opportunity to downsize their staff, to actually reform their structures in different workplaces. And that has created a problem. I was reading a speech yesterday of my colleague who was presenting the budget speech yesterday. And one of the things that reminded me of is that, you know, when our leaders in 1955 on the 23rd of June were deciding to say in Cliptown, to say to us, we must reform and have a revolution in the country to make sure that the economy caters for everybody. I thought that that was a good thing that my colleague touched yesterday. And it's 65 years now. And that dream is still a reality for us, the generation of today, that we must make sure that our economy does not only cater for the few. We were exposed as a country now during this COVID, that this country, the serious divide, the serious economic challenges faced by the working class, our health infrastructure is challenged because we never thought this kind of a disease will come to this country. All of those requires money. And it requires this government that is led by the African National Congress to make sure that at least it has to reach out, particularly to the working class and the middle class of this country, to make sure that we mitigate what they have lost. If we look, for example, SAA and then SA Express today, where workers, they don't know whether they will have a job tomorrow because of this particular pandemic. But we know the challenges are not starting today in those two entities. They started a long time ago, but I think that we must be able to find a common ground. As a country, this is a problem not only for the government. Civil society as a whole must also come on board. The trade union movement must come on board. Government must come on board. We need to work together to find solutions during this period of the COVID-19 and the post-COVID-19 in 2 years' time. So for me, the country is finding itself in a difficult situation. But I know South Africans, as South Africans, we are resilient, and I think we'll overcome this challenge. And I have no doubt with the current leadership that we have in the country, that will definitely succeed going forward. The only thing, we need tolerance, we need to work together, and we not to shame each other, but make sure that our people trust us as their leaders and the leaders of business and the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ntate Mpisi. Your comments are noted. Sitting on the side of a petrol station, Mr. Dakile, what are your opening comments around where South Africa finds itself today?
No, I think this is a reflection of the global crisis, which, if you look in terms of its historical development per se, each and every probably a decade. I mean, when you take back in 2008, we were confronted with a similar problem, 2008 and 2009. What do you call your global financial crisis, which caused havoc to the entire system. You look back into 1998, where also having a similar problem, but what you call your Asian Tigers crisis. You look back during what you would call, take it back again, during your 1988, you had also similar financial crisis. Your 1978 again, we had similar problem in terms of your oil crisis. So this is just a systematic crisis that keeps on unfolding, and that signifies that the extent of which now it reflects that we are at the global stage now. Globalization itself, it has intertwined all the system across. And therefore South Africa can't be spared from this particular crisis. It is upon us as South Africans to be able to reflect, to say, what is that we can be able to do. What comes to my mind is that the question of localization becomes much more important and critical now than ever before. The question of industrialization of our economy becomes much more critical and imperative now than ever before. The investment and the focus in terms of transformation of the education system becomes quite much more urgent and quite more critical. It needs our focus. When we have been saying all along that we need the national health insurance, people could not be able to understand and appreciate why it is important that the health system must be regarded as a national asset, not for the have and the have not, because now madam will be safe, but madam will be able to need a cleaner, who the cleaner will come from the community with a disease and bring it to the cleaner. But I think what is also important is the fact that it is quite a very painful experience. Because if you look in terms of the origin of this particular disease in South Africa in particular, it has been brought by people who are rich, who've got money to travel to the world. We come back now and infected, in particular people who are going to remain with this particular disease. Are you working class, the poor? We have some of them who don't even have seen an aeroplane. We have never even bought an aeroplane. So those are the realities of the current situation. But what is important is that we must mobilize and organize all sectors of our society to confront this particular challenges. But it is also, each and every crisis, it also presents an opportunity. So it is an opportunity for us to say what it is that we need to do to become better off post this particular crisis.
Ndate Modise, and I refer to Fasihano's from our last session, that I'm going to drop the honorables in terms of our references to each other.
Yeah, that will be good.
Yeah, we are all honorable. Ndate Modise, I want to come to you now, and I want to to perhaps come with a more pointed question. So, as it pertains to the infrastructure development that is Budget Vote 15, which is the current cycle we find ourselves in, the committee, which you're a part, noted that the program 1 received an amount of 378 billion, which amongst others caters for the settlement of the remuneration increases, fund tools of trade, etc. Program 2 received an amount of 2 million, or in fact 2 billion, I beg your pardon, the allocation for which would cater for the construction of sub-program and payment of municipal services. And then to the point I want to come, Program 3 received an amount of 304 million in the current year. And this would allow an allocation which would also cater for the coordination and training of participants in the National Youth Service. And this is why I want to domicile our conversation for the next few minutes. So if you look at the Extended Public Works Program, the very popularly known as EPWP, the committee noted that the department is in the process of planning for the recruitment of 2,500 National Youth Service participants for the financial year 2020-2021. And this, as I understand it, would be a new intake. Let's talk a little bit about how we involve young people of the province in the infrastructure development that the province so direly needs. What are your thoughts and comments there?
Thank you so much for the question. And I'm glad that you are referring to something that is in black and white. So there's no way to delete or run away from certain things, because they're factual, they're there in black and white. And they've been adopted by the legislature yesterday. And I know somewhere I lost you, but I heard something about, I think it was program 1, where you said it's 3.3778 billion or something. They can't give us such money. 378 billion. It won't happen.
378
3.378 million. Yeah. Look, the infrastructure of Gauteng plays a very critical role in empowering those who are, especially the small businesses. What we found when we came into the committee, and this is what the committee is trying to fix and fight with the department and fight with contractors. Because remember, these SMMEs relies on these infrastructure programs for their well-being and for their companies to grow, because they're so-called levels, or CDIB, GB, I'm level 8, and so on and so forth. We are saying, if we were to have a program, an infrastructure developmental program in Western, in Mansonville, for argument's sake, and this program is about building a school in Mansonville, Long before we appoint your architect, your professional services companies, long before you go to adverts and so on and so forth. Let's have a proper discussion with the ward councillor. Let's have a discussion with the municipality. Let's have a discussion with the community around that area where development is going to take place. Such that when the program comes, when the project gets into the community, the municipality are aware of the project. They know what is expected of them, and they know the role that they're expected to play in that particular project. When you bring your professional services to do your geotechs and all of that, and when you finally appoint a company that is going to do that project, the community of that particular area should not close the street and toy and say this project because they're not benefiting from. So we're saying as a committee, those are the first things that we need to clear. Let's have a bilateral engagement with the community first. Once that is settled, you can then bring the infrastructure development. And once you do that, the community will have an appreciation. Those who are in business, they already know that Opfasia is on level 1, Jompis is on level 3, Tumisani Takile is on level 5. So Tumisan will do the one that the sewer sanitation, because this company can do that. It's empowered enough to be able to do so. Fasia will do tiling and paving. Jompisi will do electrical and so on. Pomudisa will do roofing. So you don't bring skills that you can find in a community from somewhere else. And because those are the things that drives community to end up stopping projects, and then department has to pay the contractor, but the project is not finished, and then the community gets to be blamed. So we're saying let's clean those things first. That is very important. But second to that, we're saying and this is what we've been doing as a committee. It's just that we're disturbed by the COVID. We would go, when we have committee meetings, we'll have our committee meetings in communities, because we said we can have a committee meeting in the hotel. It's very simple. But who gets to benefit from it? Who are we talking to when you go to a hotel? Let's go to the community. So we take our committee meetings to the community. We invite communities. And when we get to a community, the department knows they must bring all the project that speaks to that particular area and that particular area only. So if we're in Hammanskraal, we don't want you to come and tell them what you are doing in Devon. The people of Hammanskraal have got nothing to do with Devon. Hammanskraal as a department. What project you have for them, which projects are coming for them, and how long is it going to take? What are the figures that are going to be spent in their own community, so that the community can take ownership and be proud of this project, so that tomorrow, when there's a Toito, community can no longer ban the library, because they know that government has spent 45 million into that library, and the beneficiation of that 45 million was left within the community of Hammanskraal. And that is what we are doing. And that, for us, has been a very important thing as a committee, to say, department, in your planning, in your APPs, things that we want to judge you on. This thing of having a project that come and get to be stopped because community can't claim, don't know anything about it, must come to an end. Not forgetting the municipality, because municipality also plays a very important role when we go to this particular communities, because these communities belong to a particular municipality.
Honorable MPC, help me here. So if I look at the Economic Development Budget Report, this was vote 3. There are a couple of things about the documentation there that for me was startling, and I think the residents of the province need to be aware about. So in the 2020-2021 financial year, the budget report tabled in the second calendar year of the 6th administration, that is being the current administration, allocated to the Department of Economic Development in the current financial year 1.8 billion. Now, it's split in several ways, and that sees, by the way, a 16.4% increase year on year.
I think this is my question for economic development. That's the committee I'm representing.
All right. I mean, I'm happy that you come at it, but I want to...
That's my job.
No, don't be jealous, because I think he's asking it... He's asking it because of he's asking where the purse is, you see.
But so for me, here's the thing about this that jumped out. So the budget is aimed at supporting the goals which were set in the National Development Plan. Now, as a resident, Fasiha, and yourself, Joe, help me here. Where is the province in as far as it being ideologically aligned with the nation state, in terms of the program of the day. So the first question I'm asking, and I'm asking it because it appears in the chat, is the National Development Plan still part of the framework we use in our planning process? And I'll leave that for you to consider and to think about. Then the second question, the committee noted that in the current financial year, additional funding of 222 million has been granted to the department for transfers to the GGDA. Now, I'm old enough to remember a time when the Gauteng Growth Development Agency was known as the Gauteng Economic Development Agency, GEDA. But we've seen transfers to the GGDA and the Gauteng Tourism Agency. First, tourism has been decimated by COVID. Second, the Gauteng economy isn't growing and developing. So my second question is, these funds that we've made available, both to the GGDA and to the GTA, and that is 200 million and 22 million respectively, how are those funds going to be allocated? How are those funds, from our perspective, how are we going to exercise oversight over those funds to ensure that we maximize delivery to the residents of the province? And I'll let either of you go have a go at the question at your will.
Okay, let's start with Fasia. Maybe she'll give more detail, and I'll give you the how we as Treasury have allocated this money and for what reason. Yeah,
Fasia, you first then. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so in this capacity, I'm the acting chair of economic development, and you quite rightly have identified. So the largest share of that transfer does go to the Gauteng Growth Development Agency, which is what we call GGDA. So they're receiving 791 million rand, and that's followed by JEP, the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, which speaks a lot to what I want to say Bones, but not everyone knows it. Honorable Modise spoke around, which is actually an amount of 231.3 million. And lastly, for tourism, we've allocated 138 million. And one of the big reasons is for that is really that the tourism sector has been decimated by COVID-19. And there's been severe job loss in this sector in particular. Even today, I spent the larger part of the afternoon in an NCOP meeting around tourism and about how we're going to be creating basically what we're going to call a legislative forum between national, provincial, and local, so that we can provide and play much better and more efficient oversight to create more job opportunities. But I think the last thing on JEP that I want to say, and this is important, one of the reasons why the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller gets so much money from us is really because their job is to support small businesses, township entrepreneurs, young people, women, etc., marginalized groups of communities to actually start up businesses and to get financial support, yes. But it's not just about financial support. They run training sessions. They'll help you with a business plan. They'll help you, even in the different sectors. Say you're a farmer, they'll help you find the right people to get into contact with. So the idea is that JEP is actually meant to sort of provide that cushioning for people who are trying to start businesses and really push. And then obviously GGDA, it also covers a little bit about yes, it is about infrastructure, but it's really around boosting different types of the economy. So even the innovation hub gets money from the GGDA, because we're saying we can't just be funding the same projects all the time. We need people to think of other innovative ideas. We saw it, for example, with the water crisis. We saw it, they've worked in collaboration with the Gates Foundation to set up the toilet systems that don't work on running water. So we're looking at funding different projects to not just boost the economy, but to try and come up with innovative solutions to some of the issues that we face.
Ndadimpisi, before you jump at this, Fasia, I just want to come back to you on this. And this is a candid question. It's pretty clear that in terms of planning and resourcing, the legislature, and that is to say the bureaucracy, is doing the best it can. Are we moving fast enough?
No. Not at all. And I think that's also partly, it's not just the executive's fault. I think we have a huge role to play here. In our training, one of the things that one of the trainers said to us, and they've really taken it to heart, and that person said, if there was a failure in service delivery, we are as much to blame as the executive. So even though we're not necessarily directly tasked with that service delivery, our job is to push the relevant department to work harder and to work faster to get things done. And I don't think it's moving fast enough. By all means, no, people are suffering on the ground. And as much as we're putting the right amount of money to things, we need to see that money trickle down into our communities, particularly into marginalized communities as well.
Ndatimpisi, to come to you, first, my original questions around the allocations of those budgets. And then just as an additive to those questions around what we need to do as residents of the province in how we engage with the province to ensure that we are best placed to succeed. But I'll let you first take a stab at the allocations of the budgets.
Yeah, thanks very much, Vusi. I think as a portfolio committee, what we did when we met with the MEC and the HOD and the DDGs of the department, looking at various options and ways of readjusting the budget. We then requested the department to make sure that we cannot allocate a budget that is adjusted now to a department if the department does not actually submit an approved APP, which each portfolio committee would have gone through, because that APP will inform Treasury as to how are we going then to allocate this amount of money. We're not deviating much from what we said in February to now. However, we requested all the departments to refocus their contribution into COVID, particularly to the affected areas within their portfolios. We have said that. Two, you said that is our plan still within the lines of NDP? Yes, because the National Development Plan is the guiding principle that we're using. And in Gauteng, we even extended that by saying that let us adopt what we call a GGT 2030, which is the Gauteng policy that is actually driving our implementation process towards 2020 to accelerate the changes that we want to see in the country through economic development plans that we have adopted, through also the infrastructure rollout that the country must actually get into. Particularly, the main focus must be what the Presidential Infrastructure Committee has said to all of us, that our focus, each department must focus into that. But I want to come back to this issue that you just asked my colleague. There are various sectors in the province that are affected. And we have said to the MEC and to the Premier that all those areas that are affected and they're in the province, we must find a way of saying how best do we make sure that we assist them. Yes, tourism and hospitality industry is the hardest hit in the province, and we as the MPLs and working together with the executive, we must make sure that the first priority is to make sure that we don't shed jobs. We must make sure that we assist those particular industries. We must make sure that workers are not being retrenched because of the challenges that they are finding themselves in. The growth economy development plan that some of our agencies are finding difficult to navigate around is because of the challenges which the economy in the country as a whole. We know that our economy is not growing. Our economy is very slow, and I must also say that Vusi, that we are not moving fast in terms of the implementation of some of the projects and programs that we have adopted. So as finance, we have said to all the MECs, we have what we call the GPG wide, where we invite as the portfolio committee each MEC and the HOD to come and account to us on the expenditure. We know that they have their own portfolio committees where they account, but they come to us because if we see that a particular department is not spending, the MEC as an authority in that particular department must be able to explain to us why are they not spending. you'll realize in one of my reports that I presented on behalf of the committee yesterday, we've named the departments that are not spending. And that is a problem, because if we don't spend the budget that is given to us, we are not going to assist the people of Gauteng to have a better life, which they desire. 2, we have said that for those that are willing to come to us before the red light flicks, and they must tell us as to say, what is it that we can do as the committee and the department to assist them. For example, let me just make an example. It's just an example. You look at the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture in the province. They've spent 86% in some of the programs that they've adopted at the beginning of the 2019-20 financial year. If you can't spend 95% of the budget, then we are saying that your department is not performing. And then we need an explanation, because we as the MPLs, unfortunately, we have to account to the people of this province, because we are the eyes and ears of our people on the ground. And that is why it's important that the question you just asked, whether we're moving fast or not, we're not. And we have said that we have to make sure that the bureaucrats in the province, they must account. If you are an HOD, you must account for your department. If you are a DDG in a particular portfolio in a department, you must account for the work you do. We can't wait until the department collapses because of the people who are lacking capacity to implement the decision that we as politicians have taken. And there's, in some way, there are sabotages here and there. There are bottlenecks, you know. If the officials don't like a particular decision, they don't implement that decision. And we said to the Premier and the MECs, there must be consequence management. This budget that we have adopted yesterday, and I can tell you, Vusi will come back to you towards the end of the year to account to the people of this province to say, what is it that we have done to make sure that we clear the path on this particular issue. And I must also indicate to you, Vusi, that in the province, through our oversight work, most departments today have expelled their CFOs because their CFOs could not actually implement what we said they must do. They don't want to spend, they don't want to support projects, particularly in the working class community. If you look at the projects, if we say that as Gauteng, 30% of the budget, 30% of the total budget of the province must be spent in the townships. We mean that it is the HODs of the departments, their CFOs, and their DDGs that must implement that particular 30%. And I can tell you, we said the focus must be on youth. The focus must be on women. The focus must be on disabled people who are owning small businesses. And those are not being taken care of. Instead, departments, they will go for bigger companies that are well off, forgetting that we must close the gap between the rich and the poor in the province. And for us, that is a problem. That is why this budget must actually respond to what their APPs are saying. If not, we are going to engage robustly with the Gauteng government. We are the eyes and ears of our people in this province, and that's what we must do.
I want to come to another point, and it's a deepening of the conversation we've been having.
Yeah.
So the idea that we need to transform our economy has taken hold. If you go to the average household in the Gauteng province and utter the words radical economic transformation, people will know at a high level what you mean, right?
Yeah.
That notwithstanding, we still haven't built an inclusive economy.
Yes.
One that is inclusive of young people, inclusive of women, inclusive of the marginalized communities, and inclusive of the poor and disenfranchised.
Yeah.
We also, and I think this is more to my point, we haven't decoupled the power of the monopolies that dominate industries in our province. So if I say to you, if you want to buy an item of clothing, where do you go? You can name the top 5 outlets. They're all large. They're all owned by the same. They're all listed on the exchanges. Yet where we're from, all mama and our parents and our aunts can make these items of clothing.
Sure.
So there's clearly a disconnect between the aspiration of our budgeting, this idea that we need to include the marginalized groups, we need to build the township economy, and the application of those budgets, which perpetuate the very same cycles of exclusion. At a very real level, what do we need to do to move the needle on this issue? What needs to be done?
Vosi, I think, let me take this one again. I think if you look at our equitable share that we're giving the department, we're not saying that big companies must not do business with the Gauteng government.
Yes.
But if we are to be realistic and say, what is it that we want to achieve? We'll definitely make sure that our priority will be focusing on the SMMEs. I made an example at some point, and I said, if you look at, for example, Mfuleni area, and you look some areas in the West End, and you look at the roads in those particular areas, and you take a group of young people who have potential and who are having small businesses in closing potholes in those townships, you will take not only $1 million to give it to them, but you would have transferred an amount of plus minus 500 million to those young people who are actually currently unemployed. And say to them, this is what we are giving you. We know you have a potential. You can do this. You can close all the potholes that we have. And this is the budget we are giving you. And you monitor the budget and the implementation of that. Would have closed the gap. But if you look at now, for example, the companies that are cutting grass on our freeways and our provincial roads, these are not black township companies that are doing that. These are seasoned companies that are owned by a particular group of people who are non-Africans. I'm not being racist about this. But if we want to close the gap, you can't continue to give the very same company that has been there during apartheid days and now. This very same treatment that you need to give to our own people, I think that has to change. We are excluding our people indirect, not direct, indirect, by not taking a principled decision as politicians and say, this is what our people said when they were voting for us. We need economy to be transformed, but we can only transform this economy through this particular process. For example, you want to build a school and you have 6 companies that are bidding, and 2 of them are African-owned companies. Black people are owning that company. And the other 4 is white companies. But you find that a black company is excluded because of a small thing that could have been sorted and assisted by the department to make sure that that black company gets that particular tender. You look at the road, what you call William Nico, as an example. That road, the first phase of it was built by GIFA, which is the agency of Treasury, working with a black company to deliver that particular first phase. But the black company was not given a continuation to take over and continue with the second phase and the last phase of building that road. But the white company was given that. So I'm simply saying that we need to be realistic and find a better way. If we are serious about transformation, we must transform robustly without fear or favor, and making sure that our people are given this particular thing. Because white monopoly will definitely dominate in our country if we are not taking a direct and a political decision that is correct by empowering our own people, particularly youth. Particularly youth.
Can I want to...
No, please go for it. Absolutely, please.
Yeah. I think for me, what confronts the Gauteng government, it's the culture that has been allowed to continue for quite a number of time. So, and that culture, if it's not being dealt with, no matter what strategy that you come up with, that culture will eat that strategy for a breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. You will not be able to move forward. And there's a culture of non-accountability among bureaucracy. Because bureaucracy in department, they will even tell MECs that, by the way, previous MEC, Memes found me here and left me here. MEC Mamabulo found me here, left me here. You too, you will find me here, you will leave me here. So basically, those are the owners of the department who are not performing, who are not delivering on their APPs, and there are not only consequence management that takes place. So I think it is high time that we need to begin, because at the end of the day, it is politicians that get blamed. It is not bureaucrats that get blamed. I mean, you look in terms of number of projects across the province that are either unfinished or either there's serious crisis in terms of their implementation. And people don't blame the bureaucracy, but people blame the politicians. I mean, one of the good opportunity that has been presented by the virus now, it is the fact that the PMFA itself is a constraint to the system. But during the COVID, people have been able to say, we are making amendment, we are enabling yourselves to be able to go and do the following. We've got now, if you what is called your probity auditors, who take years and years for them to approve projects. But during COVID, all those processes have been put aside. So the PFMA as a system itself, as law, it needs to be looked at because it presents serious constraints to the system. That's the point that I wanted. So no matter how much budget that you can have, but another culture that we need to look at is a question of being able as government to say, what value do we derive for the money that we invest in each and every department?
Right.
Because even if when you say people have spent 98%, people have spent 95%, people have spent 99%. But what is the value that we deduce from what has been spent upon? Thanks. That's the issue that I just wanted to raise. And I think it is us as the portfolio committee, as chairpersons of the portfolio committee, to be able to make sure that we make follow-up and consistently we play our overall side. And where the law creates challenge and it becomes a constraint, it is within our responsibility as lawmakers to amend and change that particular law. Thanks.
And I think if we note the extent of the, I'll take your comment in a minute, and Tate Modise, but I think if we note the extent of the agitation that the average citizen has, it goes without saying that the moment to start making those changes is upon us. And that we would be remiss in our duty if we did not take the opportunity. Now, something like this is a great platform to do this. The idea that we are meeting on a virtual platform that allows citizens to be a part of this conversation is a great first step to take there. The next step is then around how do we actualize the things we're talking about? But even more importantly, the speed of the problem, it appears to me as an outsider, is faster than the speed of the solutions that are being crafted for that problem. Which means every time a solution is crafted, the problem has changed. And unless we get ahead of that and get around that curve very quickly and get into that loop, we're constantly going to find ourselves reacting to the problems of the day rather than being the people who are dictating the pace at which things should be moving. Tate Modise, Infrastructure is a critical part of how all of these things find expression. Infrastructure, we had the Sustainable Infrastructure Conference happening, as I'm sure you're aware, just yesterday, hosted by the president. And so it's pretty clear that South Africa is in dire need of infrastructure. And again, the hub for that will be the province. How do we use radical economic transformation, the inclusion of poor and marginalized groups, the inclusion of the township economy, in how we activate an infrastructure development program that works for all citizens? What are your thoughts?
Well, I wanted to respond to the earlier question that you posed, because I felt it is a very critical question. And in responding to it, I wanted to take Fatsia's role and play the devil's advocate. And I realize if I do that, I'm going to be very unpopular in the province. And unfortunately, we have almost 100 people who are tuning in, and I'll be a point of discussion.
You see, you have taken an oath, so don't fear.
Be as it may be. You know, Bravos, I used to work for a municipality back in the day. And one day, for some reasons, I saw an invoice that was paid to some catering company, because there was a council city. A bottle of water that will buy for 9 rand or 10 rand at most was quoted at about 56 rand. Just as one bottle of water. And this is a black-owned catering company. And I don't understand, why is it whenever there's government involved, prices escalate? You know, and there was a story about the 2010 World Cup and the collision around cement and so on and so forth. And
So it's such a pity.
We have lost him.
Go to a shop and you give it to Fasia to supply it to the department. Fasia wants to make 600% profit on it. It's a problem. And these are the things that we need to talk to. But coming to the question of infrastructure, look, the province will not go anywhere if we don't get the infrastructure department up and running. And one of the things that we did, and I'm happy that Honorable Mpisi spoke to it.
Hey, nah. Hey, Modise, what are you doing to us?
I tell you what this is. It's because before he made his comments, he said that he was going to be unpopular, and the agents have cut his connection. The bloody agents have cut his connection.
Now, what we are doing? This is what we are doing.
We missed you, Modise. We missed you.
Can
you start where you said where Honorable Mpisi was?
Okay, I was saying when Honorable Mpisi spoke about it, where he said there are certain people that had to be gotten rid of in the department because they were stumbling themselves. In the infrastructure development and property management, we realized that certain senior officials were part of that clique. That was a problem in getting the ball rolling. We got rid of those people. We brought in people who are prepared to work for the people of Gauteng. Now, this is what we are doing. Let's say HMPJ Stadium, Department of Sports says we want to fix HMPJ Stadium in Mamelodi. We say, okay, which part of this project does it fall within the Department of Infrastructure Development? Who is responsible for this particular project? It's John Peace. So John Peace, HMPJ Stadium is your baby on behalf of the department. How long do you think this project is going to take, subjected that there's so much budget allocated to this project? John Peace will say in the next 8 months, the project will be completed. The 35 million will have been spent. Now, John Peace's responsibility as a project manager is to ensure that the 35 million that has been budgeted for goes to HMPJ and do what it's supposed to do at HMPJ Stadium. Failing which, it is on his head. So now, John Peace must leave the department honorably so, because he could not keep his word. He could not keep his promise, because when we go to the community of Mamelodi, we are going to tell them what we as the portfolio committee and the department have agreed on, and introduce John Peace as a project manager that will be working with the community of Mamelodi to ensure that HMPJ is sorted. Another example is here in Midval. There's a early childhood development center that was supposed to have been built about 2 years back. And there's been, when we came in, the department said, no, there's a problem, but we never knew what was the problem until we decided to meet with the community. The community told us what was the problem. We convened a meeting between the municipality of Midvaal, the Department of Social Development, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Infrastructure Development. As I speak to you now, unfortunately, due to COVID, that project will have been up and running because the bottlenecks were about personalities and who's better and who's not better, and you call the meeting why you that are impacting. Before we do anything, we want to get involved with the community. We want to hear from the community what is the problem. Now we're attending to the project that have been stalling for some time. We're supposed to be in Sebuken Zone 7. There's a DLTC that was supposed to have been completed by now. It is I don't know why they call it white elephant, because that has nothing to do with white elephant, but that's how it's referred to. That DLTC in Sebuken, it's a white elephant as we speak. Whatever structure that was there, people are taking, bringing it down piece by piece. We have identified Fasia Hassan from the Department of Infrastructure and Development as a project manager responsible for that project. We had agreed on timeframes. We had agreed on the budget. So that's what we're doing now. We're no longer working for no reason. We give you a project, it is your baby. We give you a project, it is your baby. And whatever we agree on, we'll take you to the community and we'll announce to the community that this is what we're going to do and this is how it's going to work, and failing which, and then there's a problem. I can tell you now that the Department of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture in the province feels that we're holding them back as a department, and not only them, including Department of Education, to a point that the education are saying, give us our money, we'll build our own schools, because you as infrastructure, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. In Alexandra, there's a school called Nokutula Elsin School. I can tell you now, we pick up that the hostel where these children who needs a special attention, a hostel has been built on a sewer line. Is it sewer line, Mr. in Peace?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you do that? How do you build a hostel on a sewer line? Now, if we delete that hostel and move it and go and build it somewhere, who's going to incur those costs? Who was the project manager? Where is the project manager? How did they okay such a project? And these are the issues that we're attending to. And I can tell you, some of us are not popular in the department because we're zooming into, because we have time and we're reading the reports. Last time we picked up that the report that was given to us, I think two months after we got into the legislature, the very same report, this time around page 12 will be in page 98, page 98 will have been page 3, and so on and so forth. And the difficulty with us is that when we read this report, page by page, you make your own notes. So you read a page, you summarize. You read a page, you summarize. So as I was busy summarizing, I realized, but I had some summary similar to this one some time back. Then I went back to my notes and I picked up. And that chap, as I speak to you, is in problem because we can't work that way. So when we say Mr. Bravos will be in Tembisa, we're going to do the following. We want to do that for the people of Tembisa. We want the people of Tembisa to know that when the provincial government says to us they'll be here at 10 o'clock, it means indeed at 10 o'clock the provincial government will be here. And hence, some of us are parked on the side of the road because we realize if we're to drive home, 6 o'clock will not be able to log into the meeting. So the best thing to respect the meeting and the people that are sitting and listening, let's park on the side of the road and engage, and then we'll drive. So that's the type of a relationship that we want to build, a trust type of a relationship.
It seems to me just off the face of the conversations that we have had, that in part what we are talking about here is a professionalization of the public service. And professionalization not from an HR perspective, but from an attitude perspective. That people respect working for the state and working for the communities as they would working for, and I'm going to use a very unpopular term, the boss somewhere. That we respect what it means to have the privilege of service that we enjoy and have. I want to just, as we kind of round off our conversation, I want to touch a little bit on the informal sector, because of the latest numbers that were released yesterday by Stats SA. One of the glaring statistical inferences from me that came out of that report was actually that the informal sector has been a more stable provider of employment than the formal sector. The rate of volatility between employment and unemployment that you see in the informal sector is lower than the rate of volatility you find in the formal sector. So maybe, those of us who are sitting with offices in Sandton and have MBAs from the UK, we should be attending job preservation courses, maybe that's where we need to go to get a real education.
Yeah.
But there is this idea in South Africa that the informal sector is unsophisticated, it's dirty, it's marginal, it's unnecessary, and that it can be ignored. What many of us know is we come from households where our formal education was paid for by informal money. How do we include the informal sector in the budgeting and planning of our province? And how do we include the informal sector in the actualization of the ambitions, the goals of our province? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think
maybe okay. Take it to me.
One fundamental question also that we must ask: how informal is this informal sector? Because I want to make, for example, in the transport sector, if you take the taxi industry as if it's an informal sector, fine, good enough. But the fact of the matter is that when you look at its value chain, the quantum that is operating is a quantum from Toyota, which comes from the formal sector. The petrol that is utilized in the same sector that says an informal sector is a petrol that comes from BP, that comes from engine, and many other what you call Sasson. If you look at the tires that are being used by the same taxi, it is what you call tires that are being made by the same monopoly capital that we have been speaking about, your Tiger Wheels and so forth and so forth. So I think that's a matter that we must also look upon, because even in the township, when you look in terms of those particular shippings, if you look at the value chain of the same what you call industry, the main beneficiaries of this what you call informal sector is your SAP. So one friend of mine told me that, for example, for each and every case that is sold in a township, it is only the rent that remains in the township, but the rest of the money goes back to SAP for that particular matter. So that these nitty-gritties that if we talk about the informal sector, we need to go deep down and say who really are the beneficiaries of this informal sector. Because if you go, for example, in what you call in the tech shop, Coca-Cola is the beneficiary of these things.
In the other shop,
So I think we need to look at the informal sector quite very deeper than the current what spectacles that we apply in looking at these informal sectors. But the fact of the matter is that our economy is much more mineral dominant and relying upon, and there is quite a lot that we think probably the Department of Economic Development needs to be able to do in terms of being able to say how do we what you call beneficiate, which is something that we have long been talking about. When you look at our roads, for example, the reason why also our roads are full of trucks and what have you, they are full of minerals that we take from the country and take them to coastal areas to export them to what you call to America, to Britain, to number of other Western countries. China has also joined us. So the fact of the matter is that the growth path of our country needs to be looked at importantly, and we need to begin to look at the real value, chain of all sectors of our economy, so that we are able to extend them and make sure that each and everyone has a stake as compared to the current situation. But you must also understand who are the beneficiaries of the high rate of unemployment. So what is the political economy also of unemployment in the country? Those are just certain that I wanted just to contribute. I think my other colleagues can be able to contribute to the subject.
Yeah, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, actually.
Okay, take Fasia. I'll take it later.
Thanks, Chair. You know, Vusi, you spoke earlier about the inclusive economy, and it alluded a little bit to what Dakile was saying around the fact that we need to be very well aware of who it benefits and who it doesn't benefit. And this, having the informal sector as part of a fundamental part of the economy, is exactly that, right? And the other thing that I really wanted to say is that we also can't aim to reproduce patterns of an exploitative economy, right? So when we're talking around redistribution, and we're talking about, you spoke about monopolies earlier, and who's really in charge, we can't reproduce the same system, but then having changed the kingpins in the process. Because the reality of the matter is that the masses of our people will remain exploited and will remain at the bottom of the food chain. And that's why I think we need to really think more openly about how we do our economics. And I have very bold views on this. And I see some of the questions are also coming out about youth. I actually think we need very bold economic policy. And I can use the word radical. I choose not to, because then people think, oh, they freak out, you know. But we do need bold economic policy. And we do because we're almost at a point where we have nothing more to lose, right? We're already at a junk status. We have an incredibly high youth unemployment rate, or just unemployment rate in general, right? Even if you're looking at the narrow sense, we have amongst the highest in the world. Our people live in dire, dire poverty. And so the time is now, go big or go home. Because if we're going to continue with conservative economic policy, we're going to continue to reproduce the status quo, and we continue to get the same results. So I really think that there's a time now for courageous policy making, courageous decision making, and it will make us unpopular in the short term. It will. But in order for us to get out of this rut, in order for us to break this economic cycle and this cycle of poverty, we have to do some of those things so that 10 years from now, maybe we'll have another conversation, the 4 or 5 of us. And I hope that 10 years from now, we'll start to say, well, yes, it was tough at that time, but we made the right decisions for the long-term good.
Excellent. And yourself, Ntate Modisa, any closing comments on this?
No, I think I will spoil what Fasia and Dumsani have said. I mean, they have said a mouthful. And I like the angle that Dumsani took in debating on the issue of informal vis-a-vis formal economy or formal businesses, and
absolutely,
because I mean he raised very fun.
Who decides?
Absolutely. I think that's where we leave it. And I think that's been a fantastic conversation. I note that MPC seems to have been cut off. Not quite sure what's happened there. And he's just joined us again in the conversation. But if there are any final comments from you, I'd love to get them now. I have to confess that I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I suspect, looking actually at the comments, Mpoma Jenge says, I'm absolutely loving this. Buitumelo Mokwena says, very, very interesting. And I think it's finally because we have the courage to have these conversations. I think we spent the past 25 years scared to speak the truth to each other. A bit like, I was explaining this to someone the other day, and I said, being a South African now feels like a couple that's out of its honeymoon phase. It's almost as if we married in 1994. We enjoyed this beautiful honeymoon phase of the Madiba magic and the Thabo Mbeki growth economy and all of the stuff that happened after that. But now all of a sudden, we're sitting across the table looking at each other as partners and are able to have an honest conversation about the habits we like and we don't like, the things about each other we enjoy and we don't enjoy. And we complement each other where it's necessary. And where it's necessary, we must, as we should, call each other out too. And I want to thank all of you for having made available your time for this conversation. I wonder if any of you have any closing comments. Any closing comments from you?
Yes. Can I do that, Fusi?
Please go first. Yeah, because you cut off, so I'm worried about your connection.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. Thanks very much. And thanks again for the opportunity. I think I must comment I was reading the chat site as well. And I must say that just to clarify one or two things that I think some of our viewers, there's a view approved by the legislature. Yes, we approve the budget according to the APPs of the department. And when we approve that, it is the department's responsibility. If Joe is employed as a supply chain manager in a particular department and Joe does not perform, Joe does not deserve to get a bonus. It is the prerogative of the HOD and the approval finally by the MEC not to grant that individual. But we know, I'm a former trade unionist, so I know how these things work. A lot of people within the departments will tell you these are the challenges that they are experiencing over time. That what they call in a township language, bruskap. If you are my friend, then you'll get it. Whether you work or perform, you'll get it. But I must clarify that as a legislature, we hold the executive accountable, and we make sure that things like this we do follow. Secondly, is the issue raised by Zamandos, Ucele, Umandos, that senior managers are deployed by the ruling party, not all senior managers. In our case in Gauteng, just as an example, the most people that are appointed on merit because of their qualification to the positions they are at is the HODs. The HODs, because they are appointed by the premier, and we also, of course, we are the ruling party. We must employ the people that we think they are correct for the post with proper qualification. And I think it's something that I think I must clarify, that the ruling party appoints the MECs as well as the HODs. Not all HODs, of course, but those who qualify are deployed to those particular positions. So I thought I should do that. And I must also say, lastly, because time is against us, I got cut off when we're dealing with the informal sector, being the one that are employing better and stable than the formal sector. It's true. When in the previous term, when I was the chairperson of education portfolio committee, and I can tell you, Vusi, that the desk in the schools, we found that most of the desks are broken into as we do oversight to those schools. We then decided, myself and the MEC Lisufi at that time, and we said, but MEC, if these desks are broken, you don't have to buy new ones. Why don't we employ people, young people in the township with welding skills to refix and then make sure that these desks are taken back to class? And I can tell you, we have done that, and I can tell you that particular group of young people are still doing that now in various townships that we've been. We can't bring somebody from Zola to Sebokeng to go and fix there. We take Sebokeng people to fix their own schools' furniture. So we have done that. And I think if we can do that more, and including the maintenance of schools, you don't have to go and call a big company to come and fix a window or change a bulb. We have to take our own people. That's why it's so important for us. And I must say, I'm very jealous when it comes to that we have to, by all means, do our best to make sure that the township economy grows and our people understand that they have their own government. Again, lastly, the issue raised by Tumsani, the issue of the taxi industry. I think that it's a big industry, but we call it informal because most of them are not registered with the state to pay tax and all that. But I think we can help them to do that. but our people do not want to register, and that has created problems. That has created problems, and I think that is the biggest, and I'm proud to say that that business is owned by Black people. And we must be able to say to them, register and make sure that.
Oh, we've lost him there. We've lost him there. We've lost him there, but I think his point is...
I just want to make an appeal. And the appeal that I want to make, that probably we may need to have a further discussion on this matter, and look really as to how we can be able to partner with civil society and also with the fourth estate in making sure that all of us play a role in making the executive and government to account. As and when we do oversight visit, probably as part of these programs, we must be able to invite you so that you literally see also in terms of the practical work on accountability that we do as the legislature, as the portfolio committee, so that we are able to deepen the understanding on the role and the responsibilities that we have. Because, for example, it is not us that is responsible to build houses. There's a department and bureaucracy that is responsible to do so. So in terms of deepening that understanding, I think that's what my suggestion and my concluding remarks will be.
Thank you, sir. Duly noted. Fasiha, we'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, look, I think I said a mouthful, and so have my colleagues, but this is, I think, the beginning of the platform of where we can increase the public's not just participation, but, you know, and I said it in the other discussion the other day, we don't have all the answers and all the solutions. Right. We rely heavily on the communities that we represent. And right. There's really a need for us to pool resources and ideas and thoughts. And I don't just mean financial. I mean, the only way we're going to deal with this economic crisis is together. And, you know, being informed from what's going on the ground. So I hope that this discussion will lead to more than that. And that's why I shared my details. And I hope we'll have more insightful and as participatory discussions as we've had tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both for your time. Thank you to the colleagues and comrades we've already lost in this conversation. To the remaining 80 people who are in this conversation, we appreciate your time, thoughts, and comments. Fasiha, I've just retweeted your tweet. So anybody who's looking for Fasiha, you can find her handles on my Twitter handle. Thank you so much and have a pleasant evening.
Good night.